Hello, hello. Hi, Shanna.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm okay. I don't know about Shanna because I don't hear her either.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was unmuted. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
That's the worst when somebody's doing, and then you're talking for like 20 minutes and people are trying to say, I can't hear you. Unmute
Yeah.
yourself. It's ridiculous. But anyhow, or then you get the message that says, you appear to be talking. Do you wish to be unmuted? So, how is everything going for you guys? Is school going well?
So far, so good. Yeah. It was a little hectic I think the week before, but I'm just really excited for reading break coming up.
Wow, everybody popped in all at once. We went from 2 people to 6. So anyhow, I don't know, all of a sudden my voice sounds strange. But I'm glad you guys are all here, and I'm glad that things are kind of slowing down. And hopefully today, this lecture is going to go relatively fast. That's my goal anyways. So hello to everyone who's here. I just want to start out. So then we had one major assignment that was handed in that was worth 25% of your grade. I'm over half marked, or I'm over half done marking it, but I want to send everybody's grade out all together because I don't think it's fair. And I had some people who turned in the assignment late. And because of COVID, because everybody's coping differently, I'm trying not to push people in ways that I might be in a different time. But because of what's going on, I want to be compassionate with people. Everybody's struggling a little bit. So assignments, like I said, are going to be handed back hopefully tomorrow night, if not tonight. And then the next one is coming up. So originally in the syllabus, the date was November 3rd. And I realize now that that won't give you much time to work on it. So I've extended the deadline so that I think you have until the 8th to finish it. And if you can't manage to finish it on time or something comes up, please contact me. I'm a reasonable person and I'm willing to help everybody. So that being said, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a heads up for how that assignment is. If we were in person, one of the things I need you to do for me is to do a model lesson. And the model lesson is having people, you would have people in your class together. You would have your lesson that you're teaching from your subject matter, and you would teach your subject matter to 4 or 5 other people in the class. But obviously, we cannot do that because we can't all get together. And I suppose we could try and work something out so we were all doing it online synchronously, but that's just going to be a big pain. So I've decided that rather than do that, we're doing a lesson plan. Okay, so you're going to have 3 different plans that you have to hand in to me. This is all written up and it is in the assignment. I looked at it today, but you can go and have a look, but I'll just give you some explanation. So the first thing is that you have, like I said, 3 plans. You have to do a long-term plan for 1 grade of your subject, so of your major. So if your major is social studies, you could take grade 10 social studies and plan out the year. Or if your major is biology, you could do grade 7 science. Okay, so you pick 1 grade, 1 subject, 1 school year, and you make a long term plan. You look at what all of the units are and map out those units. Then there's a bit of a template for you for how to do a unit plan. So you don't have to do a full on hardcore unit plan, but you have to have some you have to look at the indicators and pick out some of the things that go into that unit plan. And then once you have that, the last part is your actual lesson. So you are going to write a lesson for me, and that lesson is like a 40 or 45-minute to an hour long lesson. And you have to think about step by step by step by step what you will be doing. The more detail you put into that lesson plan, the better it's going to be. So if you write, first thing, we will watch a video. Second thing, I'll ask them some questions about the video. Third, they'll write a paragraph on the video. That's not good enough. So if you're going to, when you write that, we will watch this video clip on YouTube that's 45 seconds long. In this 45 seconds, after we've watched this, I will ask them the following questions for comprehension. With those following questions, I will put them into small groups. They will have to ask each other, like incredibly detailed, what you are going to do for that lesson. And then you are going to imagine you have some ESL students who come into your class who have to work in that class, and you have you need some way to differentiate for them. Maybe they don't have the literacy, maybe they don't have the oral language, maybe they've just arrived and they don't have friendships with people. Whatever that is, you have to think about how you are going to differentiate for those students in that class. So how do you make this class comprehensible for your ESL students? Okay. And I'm going to give you a big hint here. It's very helpful to think about the vocabulary that they need to know. So that's for your next assignment coming up. That's worth 25% of your grade. And what we are talking about today is all about differentiation, which is part of the lesson planning that you will have to do. Okay. So do we have any questions up until this point?
I do, Trudy.
Okay.
For the kind of what would seem like the second part of that major assignment, when we're looking at adapting parts of I think you mentioned lesson plan. What level are we assuming these ESL students are at, having done a benchmark assessment on them? Or do we, I mean, these are hypothetical ESL or ELLs, right? So I'm thinking,
right.
How do we make it, I mean, the whole point of the benchmark is to do just that, to understand what are the needs of the student based on their level of, writing, reading, speaking, and I'm missing the fourth one, but you know what I mean? Do you understand the question that I'm asking?
Mm-hmm. No, I understand the question perfectly.
Yeah.
And the question is, that's going to be up to you. So you can write a little description. This is for, if you want to, you can use Joe and Richard, and use them as your model for how you're
Brilliant.
going to adapt things.
Oh, brilliant. That's great.
So that
That's
will give
carrying
you an
on the work that
idea.
we've done already. Yeah.
That wasn't what I had originally in mind when I was thinking about that, but that would be a really great thing to do. So, but hypothetically, if you have a different ESL learner in your head and you want to talk about that one, then that's perfectly fine too. Just give me a little bit of a description of who they are, what their level is, and how you're adapting for them.
Yeah, no, right on. That's great because it piggybacks on the last project. So I'm teaching tiers 3 and 4 social studies, so I can just use them.
Yeah, well then that works. So you wouldn't design a year plan for every, like all of junior high social studies. You would pick grade 7 and then pick one of those classes, right? Or you could pick math 10 or math 10-1 or math 10-3 or whatever. But you just pick one course, right? Because when
And
you
it,
do it for
yeah.
a whole year plan, it's overwhelming. I don't want you to do that. I just want you to know one thing well.
Okay.
And hopefully this will be something that when you take this course, but for your major, you'll be able to build off of what we've done in this class as well.
Brilliant.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Okay, so onwards and upwards to differentiation. Does everybody see my screen with my beautiful pencil crayons?
You bet.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll start off with our land acknowledgement. The University of Alberta acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. I have some really snarky things I want to say about what's happening in the public with our curriculum realignment, but I am not going to say that. Hopefully you guys are watching the news and you're aware what's going on with how the curriculum is being redeveloped. And so anyways, it's very disappointing. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So this is part of Teacher Quality Standard 1, but it kind of works with Teacher Quality Standard 3 as well. But I look at this as fostering effective relationships, although it could be teaching practice as well. So as a teacher, you have to teach every student in your class, not just the ones you like, not just the ones that are easy to teach. You have to teach them all. And so a good teacher is doing that and is always thinking about what people are actually capable of doing and modify things so that they can be successful. Because what's one person's success is another person's failure, right? And so, I mean, I can give you a perfect example of this that happened in school this week. So, well, last week, because this school week starts tomorrow. But last week, there's a particular child in the school who's got ADHD, and this particular child is really bouncy, right? He's just one of those kids who cannot sit still. So, he was kind of driving his classmates insane. So I offered another teacher, I said, do you want to give all of the other kids a break and let him come into my class? And so this child from another class popped into mine, sat down. I gave this child work. I modified the work for him so that he would be able to do it. He couldn't do any of the writing. So I wrote everything in a highlighter pen and got him to trace. All of the other kids were coloring, so I got him to color too. And that child walked away feeling really good about himself. And did that child do the same work as everybody else in the classroom? No, but that child walked away feeling good. And that's ultimately what we want everybody who's in our class to do, or at least this is my belief as a teacher. I don't know. I think that comes through with how I speak with you guys, but you might find something different. So I don't know. So again, I think it's really important to help students always do the best that they can. And this kind of works here to A and B in my mind, right? Acting consistently with fairness and respect and integrity, because it's not fair to expect somebody to do something that they can't do. And it's not respectful to point out somebody's continued weaknesses, right? If you can't sit still, which is this major goal of school, right? Should you be punished for the fact that you actually can't sit still? Um, and then here, demonstrating empathy and genuine caring for others. That's, I mean, ultimately, we're the kind of people who get drawn into this field, right? If you don't care for others and you don't have empathy, you probably don't last very long, right? I mean, there are some people, I suppose, in this field who don't act that way, but I think that's kind of a very 1950s stereotype. I don't know many people who are teachers who really genuinely don't care about kids. So, so that's what I have to say about that. So on to differentiation strategies. So here, I didn't fill out, I never noticed that this part wasn't fully filled out when I did this. We're going to talk about what does differentiation actually mean? And then how do you differentiate through content, process, and product? So these are the three main things. This will all come clear in about 30 seconds. Okay. So there's two main sources for this lecture. One is this book, Differentiating Instruction in the Regular Classroom. You can go buy that book if you wanted to, or if you really wanted to contact me. I'm sure I could lend it to you. I don't know if it exists in the library, but Coots is gone, so I don't even know where you would find it. And the other was I took a workshop in October 2019 with these beautiful people who were from the Center for Applied Linguistics, who are talking about heritage language learning. And so in a heritage language school, you would get, like, if you're taking a Spanish class, if you're teaching a Spanish class, think about any of the language classes that you might take at the U of A. If you were taking Japanese, for example, in the Japanese class, there would be some people who might be Japanese heritage speakers, who've actually been studying or who speak Japanese with their families. You might have some people who know zero Japanese, not a single word of Japanese. You would have some people in your class who would be Chinese speakers. And even though they can't speak Japanese, they can read Japanese because they can read the characters. So you would have all of these different kinds of students, and you have to figure out, how do you teach so that everybody walks away from every lesson having learned something? It's a really daunting job, but it is possible. But you have to be skilled and strategic in how you do things. So here's a definition from that book about differentiated instruction. So differentiated instruction involves an assortment of instructional contexts. By the way, it's very annoying when people read slides, but I'm going to read it to you anyways. I'll restart. Differentiated instruction involves an assortment of instructional contexts and resources that classroom teachers create to respond to variance among learners. Tomlinson categorized these various contextual factors using 4 elements: content, process, products, and learning environment. Content is what students need to learn and how they will access it, whereas process is the activities through which students comprehend and master the content. Products can vary, but their purpose is to ask students to rehearse, apply, and extend what they have learned. The way the classroom works and feels is the learning environment. So essentially, if you have any material that you're covering, you have to think about, what do I need to do so that students understand this concept? So we've talked about this before. In an ESL class, we are expecting the students to achieve the same things in the program of studies that our non-ESL students are doing, right? So if you're teaching about the history of Rome, I don't know why that popped into my head. Maybe it has to do with the new curriculum and how outdated it is. Anyways, if you are talking about the new, any content, for instance, the history of Rome, the ESL students still have to learn about the history of Rome. The content doesn't change. However, it might need to if something is not developmentally appropriate for that student. So, for instance, if you're trying to teach math at a certain level and the students don't have the background knowledge to do that, you have to modify your instruction so that they're still learning the background so that hopefully they will be able to access that material that you're covering in class, or at least still working towards that goal. The process might be how it's done and it might be different. So, for example, if one student in your class has dyslexia, they have a really hard time reading, maybe you're not asking that student to read a paragraph about that particular topic. Maybe you're asking them to watch a video on it, right? So the process kind of would be different, right? So one might be given through reading, one might be given through a video, but the information would be the same. So they still have the same access to the same material. Just the mode of instruction is slightly different. Products would vary. For instance, one person might be asked to create a poster, another person might be asked to create a skit, another person might be asked to play a musical piece and do a dance, right? All of those things might show the same kind of learning that happens from the students, right? So not everything has to be the same. If your goal is to check that the students are able to talk about the history of ancient Rome, and then some might make a diorama and can talk about that diorama, some might make a poster and talk about that poster, have they not still mastered the same content? Right? If your goal is to evaluate can they talk about that, and they make something different to use to talk about it, they both can still talk about it, right? So you can vary an assignment by products. And then the last would be, how do you create a learning environment so that everybody would be successful? So that's a lot of talking for right now. Are there any questions so far? Okay, they say when you're teaching online, you have to give people the chance, you have to count in your head to 10 so that people can unmute themselves. So I'm assuming that nobody wants to unmute themselves. Maybe you're listening in the background. I don't know. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So, okay. So onwards and upwards. So again, these are really important to think about. The content, the process, the products, and the learning environment. So some people, the learning environment you might have to change for some students. Maybe some of the students who are having a hard time working in a classroom because it's too noisy, you let them work in the hallway. That is another kind of differentiation, right? So, so again, 3 ways to differentiate: the content. The teacher reduces the amount of context that students need to synthesize. So, for instance, you differentiate content when you pre-assess students' skills and knowledge and then match the learners to the appropriate activities according to readiness. So a teacher who does reading groups and finds out the student's reading level and has a high, medium, and low reading group, that would be one kind of differentiation. When you give students students choices about what to explore in greater depth. So if you're, again, I don't know, I've got ancient Rome in my head, but if you're talking about ancient Rome, some people might choose to study the military aspect of ancient Rome. Some people might choose to study the geography of ancient Rome. Some people might choose to study the technology of ancient Rome. They're each still doing a project. They're still developing the study skills you want them to learn. They're still learning content, but what specifically they're doing that in would be different, right? So, or you could give students basic and advanced resources that match their current level of understanding. So if somebody's having a hard time reading, they would obviously have an easier reading passage than somebody who's more advanced. So this can get really tricky with the content because you have to have lots and lots of things at your disposal, right? So if you're giving a choice, if you do the pre-assessment and you have a high, medium, and low reading group, then you need to have high, medium, and low books. If you're giving students choices about what topics to give, then you need to have something on technology, you need to have something on the military, you need to have something on the fine arts, right? So you need lots of resources there. And if you're giving them materials about matching their current understanding, then again, you have to have, whichever materials are going to fit at that level. So the hard part for differentiating with content is really having the materials. But teachers love to buy stuff, and schools love that teachers buy stuff and they don't have to buy it. So there's that. So the process is the how of teaching. So you can modify process by adding greater complexity or abstractness to the task, by engaging students in critical and creative thinking, or by increasing the variety of ways that you ask them to learn, right? So if a process might be as simple as, okay, the first stage of this product is you are going to have to create a plan, and the second part is you're going to have to write a story. Okay. But for a student who, well, I have a better example. So if you're teaching procedural writing, for example, you have a student, you want to give students steps on how to read a map or something. A student who has a lower level of understanding of maps, you might be looking at, you have to teach the legend of the map. You have to have the students point out all of the things on the map. You have to look at different kinds of maps, right? Whereas a student who is really advanced in understanding maps, you could say, okay, this student who's working at a really low part, everybody is going to have to make a map of the Ukraine, but students who are at a lower level, you would have to pre-teach all of those skills so they could go and make their map, and they might have to end up actually copying a map that's already been done. A student who's really advanced, you might say, okay, you go on to Google Maps, you find different kinds of maps on Google Maps about Ukraine, and then from there, you design your own maps, right? So you can kind of spoon feed somebody at a lower level every step of the process so that they can do it. And somebody who's farther ahead, you just say, here's the task, go fill your boots and you go do it, right? So you give everybody, some people, the support who need the support, and you give the freedom and flexibility to those people who need freedom and flexibility.
Excuse me.
And then go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, this is something that's called a respectful task. Am I right?
I've never heard that term before, but that doesn't mean somebody else hasn't used it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't remember where I encountered it first, but in essence, it means that the tasks are differentiated according to the level of student and given with respect, so to speak. So they are not treated as lower level tasks. Yeah, something like that.
So I believe the idea is similar to what I'm talking about. Never having heard that term, I can't speak to it before, but sometimes things will be at a lower level, right? If you're teaching junior high math and and you have a student in your class who's got an intellectual disability, they have the right to be in your class, but they clearly can't do the same work as everybody else because they don't have that cognitive ability, right? But you're not punishing them by failing them. You're giving them work that they can do, right? But it should be at their level. Everybody should be able to walk into a classroom and learn. So in my mind, it's not the fact that it's respectful or non-respectful. It's the fact that everybody walks away having learned something. But Jana, you might have learned that in an Education 303 class or something, but it's not a term I know. So I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying I don't know that. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. And then product, you might have students complete two different things. So you who are really good in drama, you want to tell me all about the fall of the Roman Empire, you go make me a play. You who are a really good writer, you go write me the fall of the Roman Empire. And you who are really good at, I don't know, mathematics, you go make me some charts or some, some diagrams that have to do with the fall of the Roman Empire, right? So you'd have people actually go and do different things. So when we think about ways to differentiate instruction, we have some specific tools. And so one of the ways to differentiate for content that's really important is an exit card. So clearly this is not something I can do because we're all working asynchronously, right? So tonight I sent you a Jamboard. I don't know if anybody went into their email and they saw that. Did anybody open it up?
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Okay, so when you go into that Jamboard, I think I have 4 different boards. And then you're going to take a sticky note from the side of the page, and then you're going to put your name on that sticky note, and then answer that question to the best of your ability. If you go and you do that, and I can use that information for planning. So I can, as a teacher, I can go and I can say, oh, okay, Jana, she understood this, and Safia understood that. And so maybe Safia understands at this very high level, and Jana understands from this different political context. So maybe I'll put those people together and those people together, right? So it gives me an idea about how I might group students. Or it might also be that I ask them specifically on your exit card when you leave the room, tell me something that you learned. And so if I ask you all to tell me what you're learning, and I'm talking about differentiating instruction, and everybody writes something about, I learned about lesson planning, then that tells me my message was poorly delivered, right? Because I'm telling you A and you're answering B. So I know I have to teach A again. Or it could be, what do you want to learn next? So right now I'm teaching you about differentiated instruction. What do you want to learn next? Somebody writes on theirs how to do lesson planning. Somebody else writes how to teach people how to read English. So everybody answers something different. That will help me with my planning as well. So exit cards can be a really handy tool for teachers. Another really important task is checks for understanding. And this is where I really struggle in teaching you online. So I have my 6 friends who are here today who can answer these, who can ask me questions, right? And so I can say, do you understand? Do you have any questions? And some people will say yes. So I get some kind of feedback. But all of my friends right now who are teaching online are seriously, seriously, seriously depressed. And part of the reason why they're so depressed from teaching online, I'm not making this up, by the way. Part of the reason why they're so depressed teaching online is because they have no ability to check for understanding, and they feel like they're talking to the air. So, little things that a teacher would do in a regular classroom, a teacher could simply has all kinds of tools to instantly on the spot check if somebody understands. One is to say, do you understand? And if you understand, give me a thumbs up. If you don't understand, give me a thumbs down. If you're not sure, give me a thumb sideways. And then the teacher asks that question. She can visually scan the room and see who understands and who doesn't. It's not a perfect system, but it's not the only system you use. Another way could simply be, the old fashioned Kahoot. I'm going to ask you a question. This is old school Kahoot before we had Kahoot with phones, because your school might have a rule about bringing in phones. So, actually, before I say that, does everyone know what Kahoot is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It was really popular. Everybody talks about it like it's the newest thing in education. It's been around forever and a day. We just call it a different name. We call it a multiple choice test. I could have every kid in my class has a whiteboard and a marker. And on that might, or even paper and a pencil. And I say to the kids, okay, we're going to talk about things that are found in ancient Rome. Tell me which of the following things is not found in ancient Rome. Write it on your card. Okay, number 1, aqueducts. Number 2, Greek gods. Number 3, computers. Number 4, plants. Okay, and then everybody on the count of 3 holds up their card, and then everybody who puts a C, I know at least peripherally understands, right? And if I know that little Becky over there, she wrote a B and she looks like she's been listening the whole time, she doesn't understand, right? So that's another kind of check for understanding. Another common one is you can give people a 5 fingers. So 1 finger, I don't understand at all. 2, I kind of have a little idea, but I'm very confused. 3, I'm not so sure. 4, I understand it well. And 5, I could teach it to somebody else. So you could give some information to your students and you say, okay, 5 fingers. How well do you understand this concept? And then you hold up your fingers in front, and then the teacher scans the room to see who understands. The benefits of doing these things, and I think I might sneeze. No, I don't have COVID. Okay, the benefits of doing these kinds of things is because they're so rapid that the teacher gets a chance to scan the room, but they're so fast nobody else can see who doesn't understand either, right? So if I'm looking at a room of 30 people, 3 of my people in my class hold up, or most of my class holds up 3 fingers. I know I have to reteach that, and the people don't have to feel bad that they don't understand. Okay. So this is content. When it comes to process, you use these checks for understanding, and you use these exit cards and all of these things to group students and to put them in work so that you can pull people together when you need them, right? Maybe you're teaching your class vocabulary, but most of your class knows that vocabulary, only 6 don't. So why are you teaching everybody? Give all of the 24 other people in your class something to do, and pull those 6 who don't to come work with you and to work on that special thing. So if you're organized, you're able to do that. And another thing teachers can do is work on agendas, contracts, or menus. They're the same thing, they just kind of have slightly different names. So an agenda would be, here we have to do 1, 2, and 3. You can go and you can do 1 as soon as you're done 1. Go and do 2 after you've done 2. Then you go and do 3. A contract would be slightly different. There are 5 things on this task. You have to do 5 of these. You have to do 4. You can choose which of the 4 you want to do, right? So you give people, you agreed that you will do A, B, and C, and E, and you're not going to do D, right? And then if you have some students in your class who really struggle, instead of asking them to do A, B, C, D, and E. Maybe you only make them do A and E, right? You give them some choice and some flexibility, but maybe don't make them do everything because it's too onerous for them. And a menu would be kind of the same thing, would be like, here's a bunch of different tasks that kind of lead to the same goal. You get to choose which ones you want to do. So these are all different ways that teachers might differentiate instruction. And now it goes back into a little bit more detail of all of these things. So exit cards, the goal, I'm not going to go through all of this, but the goal of an exit card is to check comprehension, opinions, prior knowledge, or self-reflection. The teacher asks the people to fill in a Post-it note or a sticky and then give it to the teacher. And the teacher gets to ask the question and the kids have to answer it. And these are some examples of things that might be on one. What do you not understand? What have you learned? What do you like? What do you dislike? What are you wondering about? How does this impact your life? Like, you can ask any question you want, but it tells your students' engagement. And because we can't do things like this in this class, this is where I struggle, like as a professor, because I feel like I don't know what you want from me. So I find it hard kind of to plan, but it is what it is. Exit cards. So you need to think about how to use this information. So it's one thing to ask people questions. It's another thing to do something with it, right? There was I don't know, you guys are all pretty young, and many of you here are ESL learners. Do you guys know the Kids in the Hall? Tim might know, but I'm guessing that other people might not.
Awesome. Awesome.
It's weird to me. I just don't know. I don't remember. I know the name, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay, they were a comedy troupe from.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm squishing your head. I'm squishing your head. Anyhow, in the Kids in the Hall, there's this one particular, I'm going to find it actually, and I'm going to send you guys the link, where one of the people who's in the Kids in the Hall talks about being a very bad doctor. And so because he's a very bad doctor, he orders all of these tests. And one of the things that he did, this, I don't know why this popped into my head, but it's so funny. And if you don't find my sense of humor appealing, just please don't listen. But he gives this spiel about, I'm a bad doctor. And what do? I go around and I collect urine from people. I don't know what to do with it. I just collect it. Right? So it's like, if you don't have a plan for using the information, it's really a silly thing to ask for, right? So if you're thinking about an exit card, what is it you want to know? And to think about, does this really encourage a student's growth? Like, are they reflecting on this information? Why are you asking them to think about this? Like, you shouldn't always be the judge if a student is learning. The student has to be the judge ultimately if the student is learning, right? Are they getting out what they're putting in? And so exit cards, I think, are a really useful tool, and they're not used enough. And I'm not the best for using them either, but they are great tools. In checks for understanding, the goal for the teacher is to get constant feedback about whether or not the lesson is going well. And so if you're an experienced teacher who cares, you are looking at your students' eyes all the time, and you're checking that students are understanding all the time. There's nothing worse than explaining a lesson. You have given a lesson that takes an hour and a half. You think you've given the world's best lesson, and every single word you've said has gone over your students' heads. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than that. So you need this constant feedback mechanism. Okay, I'm telling you this. Is this working or not? And again, when you teach online, this is really hard because I can't watch the slides and talk about the slides and look at you, and then you have your mics on and then you answer or see with your face. Like, so this is one of the reasons why online is so hard. But there's a million ways to ask students to check to see if you understand. The thumbs up is like the traditional way. Thumbs up if you understand. The multiple choice thing, like I said, you can have a happy face or sad face. You can have true or false in sign language, right? You can just ask random questions. So, I don't know, dinosaurs existed before people, true, right? So there's the limit to this is there's no limit. And if you Google different ways to check for understanding online, you're going to find a million of them, right? So it's good to have a bunch of different ones because students grow bored of them, right? So so there's that. And again, you can play the good old Kahoot. But anyhow, checks for understanding. So why would you want to check to see if students understand? Because you don't want to spend an hour talking to find out that people got lost 30 seconds into your talk, right? That's painful for everybody involved. It's painful for the person who's rambling, and then it's painful for the people who are listening, thinking all of the things I could be out there doing if I didn't have to listen to this, right? Again, how does this encourage students' reflection? They need to know at what point they stop understanding, right? That's part of developing your metacognitive awareness. And yeah, student reflection is important. Well, I'll let you think about that. So, when we think about flexible grouping, there's plenty of different ways to group students, okay? And you group students based on multiple reasons. Now, heads up for when you do your practicum, rarely should you you're going to have to follow your teacher, right? Your mentor teacher, what they say, but rarely let students pick their own partners. And I say this because people will pick their friends, but your friends aren't necessarily your best partners. And but you can just, here's some examples of how you can pick partners. You can pick partners by their random level. Okay. Like, so I'm going to pick all of the people who are this level, or, my high, medium, and low, or you can just pick randomly, like Billy Bob and Becky Sue and Joni are going to be in one group, right? I almost always put people at random, just because I think it works better if you have a good cohesive group. And in order to make a good cohesive group, everybody has to know each other. And people will always pick the people they know instead of trying to work with somebody new, right? It's much more comfortable to work with your friend. So, and again, because we're in online, you don't know this about me, but if you came into my class, the very first day of my class, you would have to write your name on a name card. And every week I shuffle those name cards and I put them at a random chair. So you're constantly sitting next to somebody new. So you actually learn who everybody is in your class. Like, and I've done this for 7 or 6 years that I've been teaching university. I've never had anybody say that they hate it. People initially don't like it. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but by the end, everybody writes on my evaluation that they liked knowing every single person in the class. Because I don't think that happens in any university class unless you have like 6 people, right? So I personally like random, but you could pick mixed ability. You can pick people, somebody who can paired with somebody who can't. Do that sparingly because it's really annoying to the people who can. Just saying. Interest. So the people who like dinosaurs are going to study over here in this group, and the people who like the Roman Empire are going to study in that group. And so you just pick people based on their ideas. You can put people together in mother tongue. If you had a class that had lots of Somali students and lots of Chinese students and lots of Filipino students, that would be a great thing to do. Because if somebody new has moved in who's just from Somalia, they have the other people in the group who can help them to make sure that they understand the content, even if they can't understand the language. So that's a really great thing to do. You don't want to do, again, it's like mixed ability. It's not something you always want to do because that can be kind of annoying for certain people. And then the newer people might always be looking for a translation instead of trying to make the effort. But sometimes it's a really powerful tool. You can put people in by gender. I guess nowadays that's getting a little bit more complicated with non-binary people and all of that. You can put all of the extroverts together and all of the introverts together. So there's a million different ways that you can put people together. You can put all the people with red shirts and all of the people with blue shirts, but those are just things that make things random. So there's some ideas for flexible grouping. Again, agendas, contracts, or lists, they're essentially all the same thing, slightly nuanced, but you can have a list of assignments you need people to do, and then you can have people work on all of these things at their own speed. So I could give you 6 different tasks you need to do, but you get choice in how you achieve those tasks. And the more that you have choice, the more you take ownership over it, the better it is for you and for your learning, right? It teaches independence. But then you still have to regularly check in with students, because if you give them a list of tasks and then you're not checking up on them, there's going to be, I don't know, a silent minority, probably 20%, who are going to get lost and not complete anything because they're listening to music on their phone, or they get stuck on a topic. They think they have to start with A and they can't figure out how to do it, and they don't move on to C, and then all of the time they've had to achieve those things gets wasted. So you still need to check in. And again, how to use this information. I have this question here. Have you ever worked in this system, and do you find it freeing or paralyzing? So I'm curious the answer to that question. So do you guys want to unmic and tell me if you've ever had that, a teacher do that?
I haven't experienced that.
No? I think it's a very North American way to teach. I'm guessing that maybe in your country, Jana, that teachers don't do that.
They just theoretically tell about this, that differentiation is necessary and has benefits, but nobody taught that how to do that practically.
Well, what can I say? I'm a wonderful, wonderful prof. Let's all clap and cheer for me.
You
No,
are.
nobody is my biggest advocate other than myself. No, yeah, I think all of these things are really practical that I'm trying to share with you. And when I went to this workshop and they gave all of these tips, I'm like, I have to share this with students because this is fantastic, right? So, but have any of you guys, go ahead.
When you were talking about like mixed ability, I remember in high school, there was a time where our class was really rowdy, and then the teacher kind of put people that understood the concepts and she knew that she didn't have to like worry about, and then put her with students with, well, I was one of those people. She put us and a couple of people with students that needed more help. And I felt like at times it's okay, but I felt like sometimes students feel kind of burdened if they're like always called upon. So when you mentioned not like making sure you don't put students that can do with students that can't do, because other students feel like I don't know, they feel like they have to help others, even though they kind of want to stay with the rest of the class. Because some people can have personalities where they're really introverted, and I was really introverted in high school, and I didn't like that, and I couldn't vocalize that, so I just did it anyways.
Well, and it's never a good idea. It's never a good idea to do anything too much, right? And so it's also not good for the people who can't, because if I have, okay, I'm guessing, and I don't know, but I'm guessing I speak Japanese better than you do. Okay. If you and I are put together in a group where we have to do something in Japanese, I'm going to do it and you're going to sit there and twiddle your thumbs, right? So it's everything is okay in moderation, but you never want to do that always, right? And you
Right.
want to make sure that both people bring something to the table, right? So if you and I are working on a Japanese project, and one of those things is to go draw a flag, well, you can go draw a flag regardless of whether or not you can translate something into Japanese, right? So you still have something to do and you're still a contributing partner, right? You don't want one person to do it all and two other people to have to sit and shut up. Like that doesn't help anybody, right? So, okay. Nobody else? Nobody else brave enough to talk?
Were you asking about whether or not we
Okay.
had been?
Well, the
Oh,
initial one
hello?
was, have you guys ever had a teacher who gave you a contract where you have like 6
Oh,
things to do, but you get to go do them all by yourself?
no,
I have
no.
actually like it.
Okay, well, some people find it freezing, or some people find it freeing, and some people find it paralyzing. Oh no, I have 6 things to do and I don't know where to start. Ah! And then other people are like, woohoo, I really like doing that. I'm going to knock it off. Oh, I hate doing that, so I'm going to save it for last, right? But either way, it's a good life skill, it's a good work skill because it teaches you to prioritize and it teaches you good time management. So it's a good thing to do. Um, and that's kind of, we're not in class, right? But if we were in class and we had all of the same number of assignments, and I put you with partners to work on those assignments, and you were working them with as a group, you might find, okay, you go do this, I'll go do this, and then you might find it really liberating, or you might find it really annoying. So just different personalities.
I
Okay.
found like I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jessica.
Uh what it took me a minute to like think about it because I was like, oh, I don't really remember all of that, but I'm pretty sure like we did more independent work in high school, but when I don't remember doing a lot of like they didn't give us a lot of tasks to do on our own in elementary school. I don't really remember a ton of that. It was more in high school.
Um, I think it very much depends on the teacher. I have to admit, as a teacher, I'm not really great at that because I am too much of a control freak, right? So I can't trust that you're going to go work on this and you're actually working on it, and then you're not just like flipping through the pages in your book. It drives me insane. So as a teacher too, there's a bit of how much comfort you feel in giving people freedom, and I don't. So I'm not going to lie. It's not my best thing. But there are other teachers who do that and they swear by it and they build like this fantastic sense of responsibility in students. And it's funny that you say that because in my mind, that whole contract piece is very much elementary school and not high school. You're going to do a project on the country of your choice, but you have to draw a flag and a map and write a paragraph and find a picture about people who go to school in that country, and you would give them 6 different things and then you stick it all together and there's your project on Scotland, right? So I think it depends on what those tasks are, but but either way, it does work for both. And like I told you guys before, I've taught junior high a lot, I've taught elementary a lot, I've taught university a lot, but the one thing I haven't taught a lot of is high school. So just a few, yeah, not a lot of high school. Um, but I do think it's definitely used in high school, but it's probably more, it's packaged slightly different. So, um, centers. Now, centers are really, really great for time management, right? So, like, you would have people come to you who need to come to you, but you don't have to teach everybody the same thing. So, if some people, you might have things set up, you're working on your map, you're working on this, you're answering those questions to that paragraph, but there's certain people who need work on grammar, so those people are going to come with me, and I'm going to give them a mini lesson on grammar while everybody else is doing their own thing, right? So part of the trick to using centers is to think about how you pull the people in that you need to pull them in. And that comes back to those exit cards that we talked about in the beginning. That's one of the ways. One of the ways would be, do they actually say that they understand or that they don't? Or even more than that, it could be you're looking at their work. You notice that, like I said, Linda Lou and Becky Sue and Tina are people who've all used um, caps lock when they've written the title of their story. So you ask them all to come to you and have a mini lesson on how to make a proper title in a story, right? Or how to use APA formatting or something like that. So you just pull the people in who need to. But you have to think about that organizational process of finding those people who need to come to you. Or you could have it as in A, B, and C. So A is working on this, B is working on this, and I'm teaching a small group of C. And A and B are, and then after I've taught C, then C goes to A, and then B comes to me, right? So it all depends on your thinking about how you're delivering this message. Would this message be better delivered in a small group of people rather than a large group of people? Okay. And then, again, you need to bring people into their own learning needs, and you need to help them. So they have to work on their areas of weakness or on their areas of strength. And you have to think about how you're breaking up what it is that you're asking people to do. And I just like to point out that um, there's two ways to make people better at something. One is to do the thing that you're bad at and to build those muscles for the things that you're bad at. And the other is to work on the things that you're already good at. And sometimes in school, I don't think we focus a lot as teachers on helping people notice the things they're bad at and telling them to work on those. But sometimes it's more useful to have somebody say, hey, you've done this really well, and I really like that. And if you wanted to make that even better, then you would go and do that, right? And help people develop their areas of strength as well. Um, and again, how do you grade this? And all of these things, so all of these things are things that you're always thinking about. So when we think about grading, one of the things I wanted to point out, because it's one of the questions I asked you in this week's kind of homework, is when we talk about products, observations, and conversations. So if we're thinking about differentiating for students, and we're doing all of these kinds of different activities and thinking about all of that, are we able to use these kinds of methods to look at students' products, to talk to them, to have conversations with them, and to watch what they're doing, to have observations, so that all of this kind of makes sense so that we can grade students fairly. So if our grading system is about giving everybody a test, then this is not helpful, right? But if your grading is to look at somebody's ability to do something and to ensure that they know how to do it, then all of these pieces will come together and to fit in this. So it is working to build the whole person, because sometimes it's hard to think, we have this thing that we have to teach. At the same time, we have to balance with the fact that we have to assess, right? So if I'm differentiating a writing piece for students and I'm doing all of these things, that will factor into the grade that I'm about to give that student. So on this note, are there any questions? Because I'm at the end of my slides. So are there any questions that you have, burning questions?
I don't really have a burning question about the lesson. I'm just like on eClass. The slides, I'm assuming you're probably going to put after we do
I'll
the.
put them up.
Okay, thank you.
I should have done it before, but I didn't get to it. So, okay, I'm going to stop now.